What happens when a millionaire CEO watches a homeless man beg for water and gets told to leave? Franklin Granger stood outside the 12th location of his fast-growing sandwich chain, tugging at the collar of his faded polo. The fake name tag read Ken. His beard was fuller than usual, his hair dyed a dull brown, and his posture hunched just enough to make him look like a tired, middle-aged man looking for a job. No one would guess he was the founder and owner of all 12 stores. He'd built the business from scratch 16 years ago, starting with a food truck and a vision to serve good food fast, without treating people like they were just walking wallets. But lately, something felt off. Complaints were up. Reviews were dipping. Not across the board, but enough to make him wonder what was slipping through the cracks. This store on the west side of town had been getting the most mixed feedback, some customers raving, others furious. He never met the staff here in person. With 12 locations, he couldn't be everywhere. That's why he was here now undercover. He walked in at 10 a.m., wearing khakis from a thrift shop and shoes a size too big. The assistant manager, a wiry guy in his 20s named Corey, handed him a laminated training sheet and pointed to the back. "You'll be shadowing today. We're short, so pick up what you can. Don't slow us down." Franklin nodded. "Got it." In the kitchen, he met Vanessa Traylor, a shift lead with sharp eyes and a quicker smile. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes, but stayed upbeat the whole time she explained the sandwich prep line. "You ever done deli work before?" she asked while loading bread into the warmer. "Little bit," Franklin lied. "You'll be fine," she said, handing him gloves. "Just keep pace, and if you don't know something, ask. Better to ask than mess it up." Franklin appreciated that. Some people acted like questions were a weakness. Not her. By noon, the lunch rush slammed in. Vanessa moved like clockwork, juggling register, prep, and questions from Corey, who seemed more interested in barking orders than helping. "Pick it up, Ken. You're too slow on the wraps," Corey snapped. Franklin bit his tongue and kept moving. He wasn't here to pick a fight. But then something happened that stopped everything. A man, maybe in his late 50s, walked in. His clothes were ragged, face sunburned, eyes sunken. He didn't look drunk or high, just worn down. He stepped up to the counter slowly, holding out a shaky hand. "Could I just get a cup of water?" Corey was at the register. He didn't hesitate. "We don't serve free stuff. You gotta order something or leave." The man licked his lips. "Please, just water." "I've been walking all day," Corey cut him off. "I said no. Get out." Franklin's hands froze on the sandwich he was wrapping. The entire front of house went quiet. A few customers glanced at each other. One woman looked horrified but said nothing. Vanessa stepped forward. "Corey, it's just water." "I said no," Corey snapped. "You want to pay for his drink, be my guest. Otherwise, he leaves." Franklin watched the man's eyes sink. He turned around slowly and walked out. Vanessa looked like she wanted to cry. She stepped away from the line and filled a paper cup with ice water, rushed out the door and caught up with the man. "Sir, wait. Here." He took the water with both hands and whispered, "Bless you." Franklin felt like someone had punched him in the chest. Later in the break room, Franklin sat across from Vanessa while she scarfed down a granola bar. "Do you do that a lot?" he asked quietly. She looked up. "What? Help people like that," she shrugged. "When I can, I don't have much, but I got water." "That guy's probably somebody's dad. Does Corey always act like that?" She hesitated. "I'm not looking to get anyone in trouble," Franklin added. She sighed. "He's tough, says he's just following policy. But sometimes it feels like he forgets we're dealing with people, not just orders." Franklin nodded. He didn't say anything else, but his stomach churned. That night he sat in his hotel room, replaying the moment over and over. The man's voice, Corey's tone, Vanessa's kindness. He'd written the original policies himself years ago. But had they changed? Had they hardened over time? He pulled out his laptop and opened the employee handbook, page 32. "Non-customers may not be served. Water is only for paying patrons." He had written that. Back when they had only one location and couldn't afford to give away anything. But now, They could afford a cup of water. He stared at the page for a long time. The next morning, he walked back into the store. Same disguise, same name tag. But this time, he wasn't here to train. He was here to shake the place up. Franklin showed up the next morning an hour before opening, waiting at the side entrance with a large jug of coffee and 2 plain cardboard trays of assorted bagels. He didn't say anything as the crew trickled in, just nodded and handed each person a cup. They accepted it without question, thinking he was just another new guy trying too hard on his second day. Vanessa arrived last, her hoodie pulled tight around her face as she yawned into her sleeve. She gave him a brief half-smile before grabbing a sesame bagel and disappearing into the prep area. Franklin followed her in, wiping down a counter that was already clean just to keep his hands moving. "I was thinking," he said carefully, "about what you said yesterday, about people." Vanessa didn't look up from the slicer. "We get all kinds here. Some days you can't help everyone." "But you try anyway," he nodded slowly. "What happens if you do help and management finds out?" She stopped slicing. "Depends. If it's Corey, you get a write-up. He says it opens the door to more people coming in asking for handouts. Said once it sets a precedent. You ever get a write-up?" She wiped her hands on her apron. "Twice. One for giving away a cookie to a kid who dropped his sandwich. Another for letting a woman use the restroom without buying anything. She had her toddler with her." Franklin leaned against the counter. "You ever think about quitting?" She looked him in the eye for the first time that morning. "Every week, but I need the hours. My mom's on dialysis and I cover the groceries." He didn't respond. Just nodded and turned back to the line. At 8, the doors opened and the routine kicked in again. Franklin let himself fade into the background, observing more than participating. He spent most of the morning restocking napkins and wiping counters, close enough to hear customers but far enough not to draw attention. A woman came in around 9:30, holding a coupon that had expired a week prior. She looked flustered, digging through her purse with a toddler clinging to her leg. "I thought it was good through the end of the month," she said, pushing the flyer forward. Corey didn't even glance at it. "It says the 22nd. Today's the 29th. "I just thought," she began. "It's expired," Corey repeated. "You can still order, but it's full price." Vanessa stepped in from the side. "We can honor it just this once. It's only 50 cents off." Corey's voice sharpened. "I said no." The woman looked from one to the other, then back to her child who had started tugging at her shirt. "I'll just come back another time," she murmured, turning to leave. Franklin watched quietly as the door closed behind her. He turned back to Vanessa. "Does he ever back down?" She shook her head once, short and tight. "Only when someone higher-up's around, but this store's off the radar. No one checks in unless inventory's missing." Franklin tilted his head. "You ever seen him help anyone?" Vanessa thought for a moment. "He helped himself to a new Bluetooth speaker from the Lost and Found. Said it was there more than a week, so it's fair game." A line formed near the register, and Vanessa moved back into position. Franklin returned to the prep station, his jaw tight. By noon, the heat in the kitchen was thick. Franklin stepped into the walk-in cooler under the pretense of grabbing more lettuce and stayed there longer than necessary. It was the only place in the building quiet enough to think. He reached for a crate, then paused, staring at the condensation dripping from the ceiling fan. There was a pattern emerging, not just with Corey, but with the culture inside this location. Rules were replacing judgment. Efficiency was replacing empathy. And no one was checking in because the reports showed stable sales and low food waste. He walked back out and took his place at the line. Around 2, the shift quieted. Vanessa leaned against the counter with a paper towel pressed to her neck, eyes closed. Franklin tossed her a water bottle from the cooler. "You always work doubles?" "Most days. My roommate covers Tuesdays, but she's got a second job now. So I'm here more. You ever think about applying for assistant manager?" She laughed softly. "Corey said I don't have the leadership presence." His words. Franklin raised an eyebrow. "You run the floor better than he does." "Yeah, well." Doesn't matter how good you are if no one's giving you the keys. Franklin nodded slowly, then walked to the back office under the pretense of needing more gloves. Corey was inside, leaning back in a chair with his feet on the desk, scrolling through his phone. "You need something?" Corey asked without looking up. Franklin reached for the gloves from the shelf. "This store always this quiet in the afternoons," Corey grunted. "Slows down after lunch, it's fine though." "We're above forecast." "What happens if someone needs help and doesn't have money?" Corey looked up now, eyes narrowing. "What kind of help?" "Like a bottle of water, something small." Corey leaned forward. "That's not our job, we're not a shelter. We're a business." Franklin kept his tone even. "But if it's something minor, then it's still against policy. You give one person a break, 10 more show up. We don't have time for that." Franklin pocketed the gloves and walked out, closing the door behind him. By the end of the shift, Franklin had made up his mind. That evening, he drove to the regional office and let himself in with his master key. The office was mostly dark, but the break room light was still on. He sat at the conference table, pulled out a thick binder of store-level procedures, and turned to the section on customer service exceptions. He read it line by line, then pulled out a pen and began crossing out sections. No more blanket bans on non-paying visitors. No more denial of basic needs. No more punishments for employees using common sense. He printed new pages, inserted them into the binder, and emailed an updated version to every store manager, marked with a red flag and the subject line, "Policy adjustment effective immediately." He didn't sign the email. He didn't need to. The following morning, Franklin returned to the West Side store in a clean shirt and a clipboard tucked under his arm. He didn't wear the name tag. Corey was behind the counter, sipping coffee from a branded mug. "New policy came through last night," Franklin said, setting the clipboard down. "You see it?" Corey frowned. "I skimmed it, thought it was a draft. It's not." Vanessa stepped in from the back, paused when she saw Franklin's clothes, and blinked once. "You're not Ken," she said quietly. "No," Franklin said, offering a small nod. "I'm Franklin Granger." Corey stiffened, the color draining from his face. Vanessa's mouth opened slightly, but she didn't speak. Franklin turned to her first. "I saw what you did. The way you handled things. You didn't just follow rules, you used your judgment. That matters." He turned to Corey. "I saw what you did too, and what you didn't do." Corey opened his mouth, but Franklin raised a hand. "We'll talk, later. Right now, I need to speak to the staff." The small team gathered by the front tables. Franklin stood with his hands clasped in front of him. "Effective today, our policies are changing. You'll still keep things tight, but we're no longer punishing compassion. You see someone who needs water, you give it to them. You see a mom who needs an extra few minutes in the restroom, you let her. We're not in the business of turning people away because they're tired or broke or trying." He paused. "If anyone has a problem with that, they can talk to me. Directly." He looked at Vanessa. "You're the acting assistant manager now. I want you to run this floor until we find someone permanent. Or until you decide to take that job yourself." She stared at him, speechless. Corey took a step forward. "You can't just..." Franklin cut him off. "I can, and I just did." He turned, hands steady, voice calm. "Let's open the doors." The shift started slower than usual. Word had spread through the staff text chain that the founder had shown up in person, and nobody knew what to expect. People moved cautiously, avoiding the office unless absolutely necessary, eyes flicking to the front every time the entry bell chimed. Franklin stayed near the side wall, not trying to command attention but not hiding either. He sat at a high-top table with a small notepad and a cup of black coffee, watching the floor with quiet focus. He wasn't here to micromanage, he was watching for something specific. By mid-morning, a supply delivery arrived late. Vanessa took the clipboard, her voice level as she checked off everything in the crates. The driver apologized for the delay. His GPS had routed him through a construction zone. She signed the form, thanked him, and began sorting boxes without calling anyone for help. Franklin stood and walked to the prep area. "You always handle deliveries solo?" Vanessa didn't look up. Usually faster that way. Less confusion. He picked up a box of produce and set it on the counter beside her. Still, you shouldn't be hauling 30-pound crates by yourself. She gave a short nod, then lifted the lid to inspect the greens. Corey appeared behind them, arms crossed. I thought you said you weren't here to interfere. I'm not, Franklin said, not turning. Just helping carry something heavy. Corey narrowed his eyes. That's what we have staff for. Vanessa cut in before Franklin could answer. It's fine, I've got it. Franklin stepped back. All right. He returned to his seat but kept his attention on Corey now. By noon, two of the newer employees had clocked in: Jasmine, a quiet high school senior who worked weekends and afternoons, and Marcus, a college student who mostly handled register. Franklin noticed immediately that Jasmine kept glancing toward the back whenever she finished a task, as if waiting for correction. She flinched slightly when Corey passed behind her. As the lunch wave began, the team moved smoothly. Orders came fast, but they kept up. Vanessa adjusted the line without being asked, redirecting Marcus to sandwiches and taking register herself when the line backed up. Jasmine stayed on salads, working in fast, efficient motions. Then a customer stepped forward, a woman with a service vest on her dog and a clipboard full of papers. Franklin watched her approach the counter with calm precision. I'm with the city, she explained to Vanessa. We're doing random compliance checks today. I just need to verify your posted allergen information and restroom accessibility signage. Vanessa nodded. Of course. Would you like to speak with the manager? The woman glanced around. Who's the store lead today? Vanessa hesitated, then lifted her chin. That's me. Corey stepped forward from the dining room. I'm the assistant manager, I'll handle it. The inspector turned toward him. Perfect. Just need to check a couple things. Franklin stood and walked toward the counter, stopping a few feet away. Corey led the inspector toward the back, but Franklin followed. He didn't say a word, just watched. The inspector pointed to the restroom hallway. This sign's not the updated version. It needs to include the ADA compliance code. It changed last fall. Corey frowned. No one told us that. It was in the January bulletin, should have gone out to all locations. Franklin stepped closer. It did. I remember signing off on the update. Corey turned, startled. I must have missed that one. The inspector noted it on her clipboard. Just update it by next week. No fine this time. She continued her checklist and Franklin stepped back. He didn't need to hear the rest. Back on the floor, the line had thinned. Jasmine was wiping down the prep area when Franklin walked over. You like working here? He asked casually. She looked up, startled. I guess it's okay. Just okay, she hesitated. It's fine when it's not too busy. What about the people? She glanced around. Some are nice. Franklin waited, then she added, Vanessa's great. She explains things, doesn't get mad when I ask twice. What about Corey? Jasmine's shoulders tensed. He's strict. Franklin nodded once. Thanks. He stepped away and made a note on his pad. At closing time, Franklin stayed behind. He waited until the last customer left, then called everyone to the front. I appreciate you all getting through today, he began. It's never easy when things shift, but I've been watching closely and I need to talk about a few things. He paused. No one moved, first Vanessa. You're doing more than manage the floor, you're holding this place together. Effective immediately, I'm offering you the full assistant manager position with a raise and full benefits. Her eyes widened, but she stayed still. Franklin turned to Marcus. You've got a sharp eye on register. I saw you catch 3 subtotal errors without blinking. That's the kind of attention we need. I'd like you to start shadowing Vanessa next week for floor lead. Then he turned to Corey. You and I need to talk privately. Corey didn't move. Franklin gestured toward the back. They stepped into the office and Franklin closed the door behind them. You've been here longer than most, he said. You know how this store runs, but you've forgotten something important. Corey folded his arms. Which is? Tone, judgment. Empathy? Corey scoffed. I can't run this like a charity. No one's asking you to, but you're running it like a boot camp. Corey looked away. We meet all our numbers, we're on target. And yet morale's cratering, you're wasting good people. You're creating a culture where the only ones who stay are the ones who stop caring. Corey didn't reply. Franklin continued. You're on probation starting today. 30 days. I'm bringing in someone from another store to oversee operations while we evaluate whether this is the right role for you. You'll stay on payroll, but someone else will have final say. Corey's jaw tightened. You're demoting me. I'm giving you a chance to reset. That's more than some would offer. Corey didn't respond. He stared at the desk, then gave a single nod. Franklin walked out and left the door open behind him. The crew was cleaning up, but the air felt lighter now. Vanessa gave him a questioning glance. You've got the reins, he said. Start tomorrow with the team you trust. I'll be checking in, but not hovering. She nodded slowly. All right. He took one last look around, then headed for the door. As he stepped outside, a man stood near the corner, holding a folded jacket under one arm. He wasn't begging, just watching. Franklin walked over, pulled a voucher from his wallet, and handed it to him. It's good for any meal, he said. No expiration. The man looked down at the slip, then back at Franklin. Thanks, he said quietly, not used to folks noticing. Franklin gave a small nod. We're changing that. Then he walked to his car without another word. A week later, Franklin sat in the corner booth of the West Side store with a plain notebook in front of him. The noise of the lunch rush was steady but not frantic. The new team dynamic was holding. Vanessa ran the floor with quiet control, assigning stations without raising her voice. Marcus was learning to anticipate order bottlenecks, and Jasmine had stopped looking over her shoulder every few minutes. Franklin didn't need to be in the store that day. But he wanted to be. He watched as an older man with a weathered backpack stepped inside. He hesitated near the counter, looking unsure. Vanessa noticed immediately. She walked over, spoke briefly, then handed him a meal voucher. He looked like he didn't quite believe it was real. She nodded once and pointed him to a seat. Franklin didn't move. He just noted the time and wrote down voucher process working. No hesitation from staff. He stayed until the lunch wave thinned, then walked behind the counter as Vanessa logged inventory. You're keeping pace without pushing people too hard, he said. Vanessa didn't look up. I just ask them what they need before I tell them what to do. Franklin tapped his pen against the edge of the notebook. I've been thinking about how to scale this. She turned slightly. You mean the policy changes? I mean the mindset. The balance between structure and flexibility. Vanessa closed the tablet. That's going to depend on who you trust to carry it. Some managers want tight systems, others want autonomy. I'm not looking to force a single method. But the values can't change from store to store. Vanessa leaned back against the counter. Then you'll have to start hiring based on how people treat pressure, not just how they handle metrics. Franklin nodded. I'll need help building that filter. She didn't answer, but the way she folded her arms said she was thinking it over. Later that afternoon, Franklin met with Carla, a regional trainer he'd worked with for nearly a decade. She met him at the small admin office above the east location, a location that had always run quietly and without issues. Carla had been the one to codify the original training modules back when the company had just 3 stores. I read the update, she said, setting a printed packet on the desk. You stripped out about 12 pages. Too much padding, Franklin said, and too many rules that confused judgment with control. Carla opened the folder. You want to train managers on discretion. That's hard to measure. We're going to stop measuring it. At least not in the traditional way. She looked up. I want to audit outcomes, not just compliance. How did a situation get resolved? Did the customer leave angry? Did the employee feel backed up? That's what matters. Carla flipped through the pages. That's going to require a new structure. I'm ready to build one, she paused. You're really serious about this? Franklin didn't respond right away. Then he said, I watched a man get told to leave for asking for water. That's not a policy issue. That's a culture issue. Carla closed the folder. Then we have to start with the people creating the culture. Franklin leaned forward. That's what I brought you in for. The next 3 weeks moved quickly. Franklin stayed in the background, letting the changes settle. Vanessa's decisions held up under pressure. Customer satisfaction at the West Side store ticked upward. The rate of discount reissues dropped. One customer left a handwritten note at the register thanking the staff for treating people like they matter. Franklin kept every note. In the fourth week, Franklin returned to the store one morning before opening. Corey was already there, standing near the sandwich line but not preparing anything. His name tag had been replaced with a temporary badge listing him as support staff. Franklin walked in without ceremony. "I wasn't sure if you'd stick through the 30 days, he said. Corey didn't smile. "I don't quit jobs, even when they turn upside down." Franklin stepped up beside him. "You've been watching things run. What do you see?" Corey stared at the counter. "It's cleaner. Orders are faster. Fewer mistakes." And Corey sighed. "People aren't afraid to ask questions anymore. They still work hard, just not like they're trying to avoid getting yelled at." Franklin glanced at him. "You think that's a problem?" "No," Corey said eventually. "It's just not how I was trained to run things." "I know, that's on me." Corey folded his arms. "So what now?" "I'm offering you a different role, one where you're not in charge of people. Inventory specialist. It's focused, steady, no direct reports." "You'd be good at it." Corey didn't answer right away. Then he said, "And if I say no?" "Then we part ways. No hard feelings, but I need leaders who know the difference between control and trust." Corey looked at the back door. "I'll take the role." Franklin nodded. "I'll have HR draft the change." By the end of that week, the store had a new rhythm. A few employees transferred in from other locations, curious about why the West Side team was suddenly getting internal attention. Vanessa trained them personally. Marcus started leading weekend shifts. Jasmine began mentoring a new hire. Franklin walked through the store less frequently now, but he always paused at the same booth by the window. Not to watch, just to listen. One afternoon, he spotted a man sitting at that booth with a sandwich and a small cup of soup. The same man who had been turned away weeks ago. He didn't look at anyone, just ate quietly, then stood and placed his tray in the bin before walking out with a quiet nod to the cashier. Franklin didn't follow him. He just wrote one word in his notebook and closed it. Later that month, Franklin held a meeting with the leadership team from every store. They met in the back of the original food truck kitchen he'd converted into a training space years ago. The walls were still scuffed from the early days. He stood at the front with a single whiteboard behind him. "I'm not here to tell you how to run your teams," he began. "You already know how to handle schedules and orders and food costs, but I'm here to ask you something else." He paused. "When someone walks into your store, whether they have money or not, whether they're polished or worn down, how do they feel? Do they feel tolerated, or do they feel seen?" No one spoke. "I'm not asking you to turn every location into a charity. I'm asking you to remember why we started this business in the first place. To serve food, yes, but also to serve people." He let that hang for a moment. "We're updating training. We're rewriting evaluation metrics. But none of that matters if we don't lead differently." One of the managers raised a hand. "What happens if a store slips back into old habits?" Franklin nodded. "Then I'll walk in the front door again, without a name tag, without warning." He looked around the room. "And I'll see for myself." No one needed him to say anything else. After the meeting, Franklin stayed behind to clean up the coffee cups and stray pens. Carla stepped in last, holding a printout of the new training outline. "You think it'll stick?" she asked. Franklin didn't look up. "It will. Because now they know I'm listening again." She set the outline on the table. "You ever going to stop going undercover?" He smiled just a little. "Not a chance." Then he turned off the lights and walked out, leaving the door unlocked for the next person who needed a second chance.